I used to think I was untouchable until I saw the termination letter for being pregnant. But what they didn't expect was this. Their decision would become the perfect trap, exposing the very policies they'd always ignored. And it all started with a fake, internal sharing meeting that reeked of hypocrisy. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and at 34, I'd built my entire identity around being the senior marketing analyst who never missed a deadline at Westbridge Global Solutions. The financial data company's glass towers in downtown Denver had been my second home for 6 years, where I'd carved out my place through sheer determination and countless overtime hours. I was the one they called when million-dollar contracts hung in the balance, the one who'd saved the Henderson account with a presentation pulled together in 48 sleepless hours. My performance reviews read like love letters to corporate efficiency. Exceeds expectations. Invaluable asset. Consistently delivers exceptional results. But beneath Westbridge's polished surface of diversity statements and inclusive hiring posters, a different culture thrived. It was in the way conversations died when female colleagues mentioned doctor's appointments, in how promotion discussions mysteriously stalled for women who wore wedding rings. Most tellingly, it lived in the casual cruelty of Travis Coleman, our marketing director. Travis had perfected the art of discrimination disguised as humor. "Hope you're not getting fat on us, Mitchell," he'd said when I declined drinks at the last team dinner. "Can't have you slowing down when quarterly reports are due." Or his favorite recurring joke whenever a female employee took sick leave. "That's why I prefer hiring men. They don't have wombs that cause drama." The break room walls had heard worse. "I'm not paying someone to sit on their ass for 3 months just because they decided to pop out a kid," he'd announced during one memorable lunch, loud enough for the entire floor to hear. Maternity leave is just a paid vacation for lazy women who can't hack it in the real world. I'd learned to navigate this minefield by becoming invisible in all the ways that mattered. No family photos on my desk. Vague responses about someday when asked about children. I wore my ambition like armor, believing that being indispensable would protect me from becoming another casualty of Westbridge's unwritten policies. When I discovered I was pregnant, joy and terror arrived as twin visitors. My husband and I had been trying for 2 years, through 3 miscarriages that I'd hidden behind food poisoning and migraines. This pregnancy felt different, stronger, more certain. At 13 weeks, with my doctor's reassurance and a growing bump, I could no longer hide under blazers. I knew I had to speak up. I chose the Monday morning team meeting, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I have some personal news to share," I began, watching Travis's expression shift from boredom to sharp attention. "I'm expecting, due in February." The silence that followed felt like a held breath before an execution. Travis's smile never reached his eyes as he offered congratulations that sounded more like condolences. "Well, that's unexpected," he said, already calculating behind those cold gray eyes. "We'll have to discuss how this affects your project assignments." I should have known then. Should have recognized the predator's patience in his measured response, but I was still naive enough to believe that my track record would matter more than my biology. The next morning arrived wrapped in Denver's typical May sunshine, but my phone screen delivered darkness at 7:47 a.m. One email. From Travis Coleman. Subject line, Organizational Update. My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips as I read, "Lauren, after careful review of our departmental structure and budgetary constraints, Westbridge Global Solutions has made the difficult decision to eliminate your position, effective immediately. This restructuring is necessary to maintain our competitive edge in the current market. Your company assets must be returned by noon today. Security will escort you to collect personal belongings between 8:30 and 9 a.m. Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks severance as per company policy. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. Travis Coleman, Marketing Director." The words blurred as my hands began to shake. Restructuring? My position was the only one being eliminated? I refreshed my email, certain this was some technical glitch, a draft sent by mistake. But there it was, timestamp mocking me with its finality. I called my direct line at the office, already disconnected. My keycard, which I'd swiped thousands of times, would already be deactivated. 6 years of dedication reduced to a clinical paragraph sent before most people had their first coffee. The rage came in waves. First, disbelief. Surely there were laws against this. Then, humiliation. Everyone would know I'd been discarded like defective merchandise. But underneath it all, a crystalline clarity emerged. This wasn't about restructuring. This was about the life growing inside me. I drove to Westbridge on autopilot, my Prius knowing the route better than my numb mind could direct it. The security guard at the desk, Marcus, who'd learned my coffee order and asked about my weekend plans every Monday, couldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry. Ms. Mitchell," he mumbled, sliding a visitor badge across the marble counter. "I'll need to accompany you upstairs." The elevator ride to the 14th floor stretched like a funeral procession. When the doors opened, I saw my desk already stripped bare, my personal items dumped unceremoniously into a cardboard box. 6 years reduced to a container that had once held printer paper. My colleagues avoided eye contact, suddenly fascinated by their screens. Only Samantha from accounts dared to mouth, "I'm sorry," before Travis appeared, flanked by HR representative Donna Clearwater. "Lauren," Travis said, his tone professionally neutral, as if he hadn't joked about breeding employees at last year's Christmas party. "We've prepared your belongings. The transition will be seamless. Jake will be taking over your accounts." Jake, 26, fresh from his MBA, who'd been with the company 8 months. Jake, who'd never landed a single major client but played golf with Travis every other Saturday. "This is about my pregnancy," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "We both know it." Donna shifted uncomfortably, her HR smile faltering. "Ms. Mitchell, I assure you this decision was based entirely on business needs." "Which apparently changed overnight," I interrupted. 12 hours after I announced my pregnancy? "The timing is unfortunate," Travis said, and I could see him fighting a smirk. "But these decisions are never easy. We'll provide a positive reference for your job search." "A reference?" As if any company would hire a visibly pregnant woman with an unexplained termination on her record. They'd calculated this perfectly, late enough in my pregnancy that hiding it would be impossible. Early enough that I hadn't filed any formal maternity leave paperwork. I lifted the box. My framed MBA degree sitting atop client files I'd nurtured from prospects to million-dollar accounts. The ultrasound photo I'd tucked in my drawer yesterday lay exposed. A grainy testament to why I was being escorted out like a criminal. "You've made a mistake," I said, meeting Travis's eyes directly. "A big one." He shrugged, already dismissing me. "We've made a business decision. I suggest you focus on your new priorities." The walk to the elevator felt endless. Marcus's apologetic presence a reminder that everyone knew exactly what this was. The parking garage security camera caught me loading my box into the trunk, probably my last appearance in Westbridge's digital records. Sitting in my car, I stared at the building that had consumed so many years of my life. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something harder, sharper. They thought I'd disappear quietly. Another casualty of corporate discrimination too exhausted and ashamed to fight back. They thought wrong. I placed my hand on my belly, feeling the flutter of movement that had become stronger each day. "They don't know who they're messing with," I whispered to my baby. "But they're about to find out." That evening, I sat across from Nancy Evans in her downtown law office, 20 floors up with a view of the same Denver skyline I'd admired from Westbridge's towers. But Nancy's office felt different, warmer, lined with photos of successful cases and thank you letters from clients. The wall behind her desk displayed her credentials. Georgetown Law, 20 years specializing in employment discrimination. A particular focus on pregnancy-related cases. "Lauren, what they did to you is textbook pregnancy discrimination," Nancy said, her silver hair catching the late afternoon light. "But knowing it and proving it are different battles. Tell me everything." I laid it all out, every snide comment, every joke about pregnant women. the timing of my termination. Nancy's expression darkened with each detail, her pen moving swiftly across her legal pad. "Here's what most people don't understand," she said, leaning back. "Companies like Westbridge think they're smart. They use words like restructuring and budgetary constraints to mask discrimination. But patterns don't lie." She pulled out a folder, thick with documents. "Westbridge isn't new to my radar." My heart rate quickened. "What do you mean?" 5 years ago, they settled a pregnancy discrimination case out of court, sealed records, NDAs, the whole package. They paid to make it disappear. Nancy's eyes glinted with something between anger and opportunity. But settlements leave traces. Former employees talk, if you know how to ask. So we have precedent? We have breadcrumbs. Nancy corrected. What we need is a trail. Documents, emails, recorded conversations, witness testimonies. The beautiful thing about men like Travis Coleman? They get comfortable, sloppy. They've gotten away with it before, so they think they're untouchable. Nancy outlined our strategy with military precision. First, file with the EEOC. That's our foundation. But here's where we get creative. I want you to document everything you remember. Every comment, every witness, every email that might seem relevant. Check your personal devices for any work communications. Did you ever forward anything to your personal email? Screenshot any messages. I thought back through 6 years of moments I'd dismissed, comments I'd swallowed. I have some things. Performance reviews saved as PDFs. A few Slack conversations I screenshot when they got particularly bad. Good start. But we need more. Do you know anyone else who might have experienced this? Emily Foster's face flashed in my mind. She'd left abruptly 2 years ago after returning from maternity leave. Maybe. I'd have to reach out carefully. Carefully but quickly, Nancy advised. Evidence has a way of disappearing once companies realize they're exposed. Now, here's the hard truth. Fighting this will be brutal. They'll dig into your personal life, question your performance, paint you as a disgruntled employee. They have resources and time. Are you prepared for that? I thought of my baby, of the world they'd be born into. Did I want them growing up knowing their mother had been pushed aside and stayed silent? I'm prepared. Nancy smiled, the expression transforming her from legal counsel to warrior ally. Then let's make them regret underestimating you. Start with your contacts. Anyone who might have witnessed discrimination or experienced it themselves. We're not just building your case. We're potentially looking at a pattern of behavior that could support a class action. The next week became a masterclass in digital archaeology. I combed through old emails, finding gems I'd forgotten. Travis's friendly advice about how pregnancy derails promising careers. Forwarded to my Gmail, just in case. Slack messages where he'd ranked female employees by their likelihood to breed. Comments I'd trained myself to ignore now read like evidence exhibits. But the real breakthrough came from Rachel Kimball, former HR coordinator who'd left Westbridge 6 months earlier. We met at a coffee shop in Lodo, her nervousness evident in the way she kept glancing at the door. I documented everything, she said quietly, sliding a USB drive across the table. Every complaint that got buried, every settlement they kept quiet, I knew someday someone would need it. Why didn't you use it yourself? Rachel's laugh was bitter. Because I was 25 and scared. Because they made it clear that HR professionals who cause trouble don't work in this city again. But I kept copies. Call it insurance, or maybe just hope that someone braver would come along. The USB contained gold, internal memos about managing pregnancy-related absences, emails discussing how to phase out employees likely to take maternity leave, documentation of 5 other women who'd mysteriously lost their jobs during or shortly after pregnancy. Nancy's eyes lit up when I presented our findings. This changes everything. We're not just talking about your termination anymore. We're looking at systematic discrimination. So what's our next move? We build an army, Nancy said simply, and then we go to war. Finding Emily Foster felt like tracking down a ghost. Her LinkedIn showed a 2-year gap after Westbridge, and her last known email bounced back undelivered. But motherhood, I was learning, creates invisible networks. A former colleague mentioned seeing her at a prenatal yoga class. Another remembered her husband worked at a tech startup downtown. Piece by piece, I traced her to a small marketing consultancy in Cherry Creek. When I called, her voice carried the wariness of someone who'd learned to guard their story. "Lauren, I heard about what happened. I'm sorry, but I can't." "They did it to you too," I said simply. "Travis, the restructuring excuse, right after your maternity leave." The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, "How did you know?" "Because I'm living it. Because Rachel Kimball kept records. Because it's time someone stopped them." We met at her home in Highlands Ranch, a careful choice that kept us away from downtown Denver's interconnected business circles. Emily had rebuilt her life. Freelance work allowed her to spend mornings with her now 2-year-old daughter. But the wounds from Westbridge hadn't fully healed. "I was their top account manager," she said, watching her daughter play with blocks. 3 days after I announced my pregnancy, Travis started reassigning my clients for workflow optimization. By the time I returned from leave, I had nothing left. They offered me a lateral move to data entry. When I protested, they eliminated my position entirely. "Did you consider fighting back?" Emily's laugh was hollow. "With what money? I had a newborn. My husband's startup wasn't profitable yet. And Westbridge made it clear they'd challenge my unemployment claims if I caused trouble. So I took their insulting severance and disappeared." "What if I told you Nancy Evans thinks we have grounds for a class action, that you weren't alone?" Something shifted in Emily's expression, a spark of the fighter she'd buried. "How many others?" "At least 5 that we know of, probably more." Emily retrieved a box from her closet, dusty but carefully preserved. "I kept everything. Emails, performance reviews, showing I exceeded every metric. The org chart showing they hired 2 men to replace me. Even a recording." My pulse quickened. "A recording?" "Colorado's a one-party consent state," she said, pulling out an old iPhone. "I started recording meetings after the reassignments began, including one where Travis explicitly said pregnancy was a liability to team dynamics." The recording was damning. Travis's voice, clear and arrogant. "Look, Emily, I'm being honest here. Clients want consistency. They don't want to wonder if their account manager is going to disappear for months to play mommy. It's not personal, it's business." "This is gold," I breathed. "Will you join the suit?" Emily looked at her daughter, then back at me. "They took 18 months of my life, made me question my worth, my abilities. Yes, I'll join. But we need more than just us." She was right. Nancy had been clear. 2 victims might be coincidence, but 5 or more showed pattern. Emily opened her network, connecting me with women who'd left Westbridge under suspicious circumstances. Each conversation revealed another piece of the pattern. Sarah Nguyen, let go during her high-risk pregnancy. Melissa Watts, demoted after announcing IVF treatments. Anna Gutierrez, whose contract mysteriously wasn't renewed after her second child. The stories blurred together. Different faces, same discrimination. But our most unexpected ally came from inside Westbridge itself. Ben Harlow. The investigative journalist I'd initially dismissed as a long shot, called me back with interest. "I've been tracking workplace discrimination in Denver's financial sector," he said. "Westbridge keeps popping up in my research, but I've never had insiders willing to talk on record, until now." We met in a park, away from any potential surveillance. Ben was younger than I'd expected, with the hungry look of a reporter sensing a career-defining story. "Here's what I can offer," he said. "I publish in stages. First, a general piece on pregnancy discrimination in Denver's corporate culture, using anonymous sources. Build public interest. Then, when your lawsuit goes public, I name names. Full investigation into Westbridge's practices, with your stories as the centerpiece." "What's your angle?" I asked, still cautious. The truth, Ben said simply. Companies like Westbridge operate in shadows, counting on victims staying silent. They manipulate media with press releases about their commitment to diversity while systematically pushing out pregnant women. That hypocrisy? That's my angle. By the end of the month, our scattered voices had become a chorus. 5 women ready to testify. Documented evidence spanning 6 years. A journalist prepared to expose the truth, and Nancy Evans crafting a legal strategy that would shake Westbridge's foundation. They never expected you to fight, Nancy said during our final preparation meeting. They certainly never expected you to unite others. That's their critical mistake. They assumed pregnancy would make you weak. I placed my hand on my growing belly, feeling my baby's strong kicks. They're about to learn how wrong they were. Nancy's law office transformed into our war room, whiteboards covered with timelines, evidence charts, and legal strategies lined the walls. The 5 of us, Emily, Sarah, Melissa, Anna, and I, had become more than co-plaintiffs. We were survivors architecting our own justice. Ladies, what we're building here is unprecedented for Denver, Nancy announced during our strategy session. We're not just filing individual claims. We're constructing a class action suit that will expose systematic discrimination. But first, we need to establish the foundation. The EEOC filing came first. Nancy submitted a detailed complaint outlining not just my termination, but the pattern of discrimination we'd uncovered. The documentation Rachel had provided proved invaluable. Internal memos that explicitly discussed minimizing maternity-related disruptions and strategic restructuring that coincidentally targeted pregnant employees. The EEOC investigation will take months, Nancy explained. But we're not waiting. We're going to create a timeline that makes Westbridge toxic to ignore. Ben Harlow had been busy. His first article. The Invisible Push: How Denver Companies Quietly Force Out Pregnant Employees. Published in Colorado Business Weekly without naming specific companies. But those who knew the industry recognized the patterns. My phone buzzed with messages from former colleagues. This sounds familiar. Is this about where I think it's about? Phase 2, Nancy said, spreading out legal documents. We filed a civil suit, not just for wrongful termination, but for violation of the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. Title VII violations, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We're seeking damages, but more importantly, we're seeking reform. The complaint was a masterpiece of legal writing. 47 pages detailing every incident, every pattern, every piece of evidence. Emily's recording featured prominently, as did the statistics Rachel had compiled. Over 5 years, 87% of pregnant employees at Westbridge either resigned, were terminated, or were demoted within 6 months of announcing their pregnancy. How did they think they'd keep getting away with this? Melissa asked. Because they always had, Nancy replied. Small settlements, NDAs, isolated victims. They never anticipated someone connecting the dots. We filed on a Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, Westbridge's legal team had responded with predictable aggression, denial of all charges, claims of frivolous litigation, threats of countersuits for defamation. But we'd anticipated this. Ben's second article dropped the same day. Westbridge Global Solutions named in pregnancy discrimination lawsuit. This time, he had names, dates, and Emily's devastating recording. The story went viral in Denver business circles. My phone hasn't stopped ringing, Nancy told us during an emergency meeting. 3 more women want to join the suit. Current Westbridge employees are reaching out anonymously. And here's the beautiful part, their stock price dropped 4% this morning. The corporate world abhors uncertainty. And we'd created a storm of it. Westbridge's carefully cultivated image as a progressive, modern workplace was crumbling. Their clients, many of whom prided themselves on supporting diverse suppliers, started asking uncomfortable questions. We need to keep the pressure on, I insisted. What's next? Nancy smiled. Discovery. That's where companies like Westbridge usually fold. They'll have to turn over emails, documents, communication records. All those deleted Slack messages, they still exist on servers. Every sexist joke Travis thought disappeared, it's archived somewhere. But Westbridge wasn't folding. Instead, they launched their counteroffensive. A PR firm started pushing stories about their excellent workplace culture and commitment to working mothers. They announced a new maternity leave policy, generous by American standards, clearly reactive to anyone paying attention. Then came the personal attacks. An anonymous blog post questioned my performance history. Social media accounts I'd never seen before started spreading rumors about my real reasons for leaving. They were trying to muddy the waters, make us look like disgruntled employees rather than discrimination victims. This is what they do, Nancy warned us. They try to break your spirit before we ever see a courtroom. Stay strong, stay united. Emily had the worst of it. Someone leaked her husband's startup financial troubles, implying she was suing for money. But instead of breaking us, it galvanized our resolve. We did interviews with sympathetic media, telling our stories with dignity and facts. Ben published a detailed investigation into Westbridge's financial patterns, showing how replacing experienced women with junior men had actually cost them millions in lost accounts. The turning point came from an unexpected source. Donna Clearwater, the HR representative who'd stood silent during my termination, reached out through Nancy. She wants to talk, Nancy told me, barely containing her excitement. She's still employed there, but she's willing to testify about what she's witnessed. Lauren, this could change everything. We were no longer just 5 women fighting for justice. We were a movement, exposing a culture that had operated in shadows for too long. And Westbridge was about to learn that pregnancy didn't make us weak. It made us unstoppable. The federal courthouse in downtown Denver had never felt more imposing. 7 months pregnant, I climbed those stone steps with my fellow plaintiffs, our lawyers, and what felt like half of Colorado's media behind us. This wasn't just a hearing, it was our moment of reckoning. Inside courtroom 4B, Westbridge's legal army sat rigid in their $1,000 suits. Travis Coleman, looking smaller than I remembered, whispered furiously with his attorneys. But it was the presence of Westbridge's entire C-suite, including CEO Marcus Whitman, that told me how seriously they were taking this. Judge Patricia Hernandez, known for her no-nonsense approach to employment law, called the session to order. This is a preliminary hearing for Mitchell et al. Versus Westbridge Global Solutions. Ms. Evans, you may present your opening statement. Nancy rose with the confidence of someone holding royal flush. Your Honor, we will demonstrate through evidence and testimony that Westbridge Global Solutions has engaged in systematic discrimination against pregnant employees, violating federal law and causing immeasurable harm to careers and families. Westbridge's lead attorney, Richard Blackstone, countered with corporate doublespeak about restructuring necessities and performance-based decisions. But his polished words cracked when Nancy presented Emily's recording. Travis's voice filled the courtroom. Clients want consistency. They don't want to wonder if their account manager is going to disappear for months to play mommy. I watched the judge's expression harden. Several reporters typed furiously. Travis shifted in his seat, his face flushing red. But Nancy was just warming up. Your Honor, I'd like to present Plaintiff's Exhibit 47, Internal Communications between Mr. Coleman and Senior Management. On the screen appeared an email chain that made the gallery gasp. From Travis Coleman to Marcus Whitman. Subject, Ari, U3, Headcount Marcus. As discussed, I've identified our pregnancy risks for the next fiscal year. Mitchell is the immediate concern, but we have 3 others who recently married. Recommend preemptive restructuring to minimize maternity impact on departmental productivity. Whitman's response was equally damning. Approved. Use standard protocol. Performance concerns. Budgetary constraints. Keep it clean. Objection, Blackstone shouted. These emails were obtained illegally. From Discovery, Counselor. Nancy interrupted smoothly. Your client provided them under court order, though I suspect they didn't review them carefully before submission. The hearing's pivotal moment came when Donna Clearwater took the stand. The current HR director, still employed by Westbridge, raised her right hand with visible trembling. "Ms. Clearwater," Nancy began gently. "Can you describe the meeting that took place on May 15th, the day after Ms. Mitchell announced her pregnancy?" Donna's voice was quiet but clear. "Mr. Coleman called an emergency leadership meeting. He said we needed to, quote, address the Mitchell situation before it became a Mitchell problem." What did he mean by that? He said pregnant employees cost the company money and productivity. He wanted her gone before she could file for maternity leave. He said to make it look like restructuring. "And what was your response?" Donna's eyes filled with tears. I said it was illegal. He told me I could join her in the unemployment line if I preferred. So I stayed silent. I've regretted it every day since. The courtroom erupted. Judge Hernandez gavelled for order while reporters rushed to file updates. Travis's attorneys huddled in frantic conference. But the damage was done. Their own HR director had confirmed everything. During cross-examination, Blackstone tried to discredit Donna, suggesting she was a disgruntled employee seeking revenge. But Nancy had prepared her well. "I have 18 years in HR," Donna stated firmly. "I've won awards for workplace excellence. I'm risking my career to tell the truth because watching 5 qualified women lose their jobs for getting pregnant goes against everything I believe in." When we broke for recess, the hallway buzzed with energy. Ben Harlow caught my eye and nodded. He had everything he needed for tomorrow's front page. The afternoon brought more testimonies. Sarah described being told her high-risk pregnancy made her a liability. Anna detailed how her supervisor suggested she consider her priorities when she announced her second pregnancy. Each story built upon the last, creating an undeniable pattern. But the killing blow came from Nancy's final evidence presentation, Westbridge's own data. "Your Honor, according to the company's own records, they've had 43 pregnant employees over the past 5 years. 37 either resigned, were terminated, or were demoted within 6 months of their announcement. That's an 86% rate. The statistical probability of this being coincidental is effectively 0. Judge Hernandez had heard enough. "I'm issuing a preliminary injunction preventing Westbridge from any further terminations pending full trial. Additionally, I'm recommending immediate EEOC investigation into systemic discrimination." As we filed out, I passed Travis in the aisle. The man who'd once made me feel small looked defeated. His bravado crumbled. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You're right," I replied, hand on my belly. "It's just beginning." Outside, the media descended. But all I could think about was how different these courthouse steps felt now. Not as obstacles to climb, but as a platform for change. Westbridge thought they were silencing one pregnant woman. Instead, they'd awakened an army. The final verdict came on a crisp September morning. My daughter sleeping peacefully in her carrier beside me, 3 months old. She'd attended every hearing since her birth, a living reminder of what we were fighting for. Judge Hernandez's words rang through the packed courtroom. "This court finds Westbridge Global Solutions guilty of systematic pregnancy discrimination. The evidence presented demonstrates a clear pattern of illegal behavior that violated federal law and destroyed careers based solely on pregnancy status. The damages awarded were unprecedented for Colorado, $2.3 million to each plaintiff, plus punitive damages totaling $15 million each. But the monetary victory paled compared to the mandated reforms. Westbridge would submit to 5 years of EEOC monitoring, implement mandatory discrimination training, and publicly apologize to all affected employees. Travis Coleman's termination had come weeks earlier, sacrificed by the board to salvage what remained of their reputation. But watching CEO Marcus Whitman read the court-ordered apology felt like true justice. "Westbridge Global Solutions deeply regrets our systematic discrimination against pregnant employees. We failed in our legal and moral obligations. We apologize to Lauren Mitchell, Emily Foster, Sarah Nguyen, Melissa Watts, Ana Gutierrez, and all women whose careers we unjustly impacted. The words made headlines nationwide. Ben Harlow's investigative series won a journalism award. Other companies quietly revised their policies, terrified of becoming the next Westbridge. The Department of Labor launched a broader investigation into pregnancy discrimination in Colorado's financial sector, but the ripple effects went beyond legal victories. Donna Clearwater, freed from Westbridge's toxic culture, started a consulting firm helping companies build truly inclusive policies. Rachel Kimball became a whistleblower advocate, teaching employees how to document discrimination safely. Our lawsuit had given them permission to use their voices. 6 months later, I stood before an auditorium of HR professionals, my daughter bouncing on my hip. The conference had invited me to speak about our case, but I was there to talk about something bigger. Westbridge thought pregnancy made me weak, I told the audience. They saw my growing belly and assumed I'd become less valuable, less committed, less worthy of respect. They thought I'd disappear quietly, too exhausted by new motherhood to fight back. I paused, looking at my daughter's curious eyes. They were wrong about everything except one thing. Pregnancy did change me. It made me fierce. It made me realize that staying silent meant accepting a world where my daughter might face the same discrimination. That wasn't acceptable. The questions afterward revealed how deeply our story had resonated. Women shared their own experiences. Men asked how to be better allies. Companies sought guidance on real inclusion. The conversation had shifted from whether pregnancy discrimination existed to how to eliminate it. Emily found me after the talk, her own toddler playing at her feet. "Did you ever imagine it would lead to this?" she asked. Honestly, that morning I got fired. I just wanted to crawl into bed and cry, but every time I felt like giving up, I thought about all the women who'd been silenced before us, and all the ones who'd come after if we didn't speak up. We'd won more than a lawsuit. We'd exposed a truth companies had hidden for decades, that pregnancy discrimination wasn't rare or accidental, but systematic and deliberate. We'd proven that united voices could topple seemingly untouchable institutions. A young woman approached me after the conference, tears in her eyes. "I'm 12 weeks pregnant," she whispered. "I've been terrified to tell my boss. But after hearing your story, thank you for fighting. For all of us." That's when I knew we'd truly won. Not just the money or the reforms, but the shift in consciousness. Women no longer had to choose between motherhood and careers in shame and silence. They had precedent, they had support, and they had proof that fighting back was possible. As I packed up my presentation materials, my phone buzzed with a text from Nancy. "New case just came in. Tech company in Boulder. 5 pregnant women terminated in 2 years. You interested in consulting?" I looked at my daughter, who'd inherited my stubborn streak and my husband's gentle smile. "What do you think, little one? Should mommy help other mommies fight the bad guys?" She gurgled happily, tiny fist waving in what I chose to interpret as approval. "Looks like our work isn't done," I told Nancy. "Send me the details." Walking out of that conference center, my daughter secure against my chest. I thought about the email that had started everything. Travis Coleman had written that they wished me the best in my future endeavors. He had no idea how prophetic those words would become. My future endeavors included dismantling discrimination, one company at a time. They'd fired me for being pregnant. They didn't expect it to become my greatest career move. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to hear more real-life stories of justice and triumph, and share your own thoughts about workplace discrimination. Your voice matters too.